Hello and welcome everybody. Really excited to be here today. Very, topical topic, if I may. Everyone is definitely talking about, who do we blame for an attack? And this, I think, is the best time to talk about who do we attribute attacks to. And welcome. So a couple of things. We've got a giveaway right towards the end. We're going to talk about it. And there are 4 presenters. If you do want to ask questions, please make this interactive. I may interrupt the presenters to get everybody else's questions in, and we're going to go straight in. And welcome to Stop Blaming Russia and China and maybe North Korea for all cyber attacks. I start with an alternative title format, and normally this is what I was thinking of. Should we blame our attack on sophisticated attackers? And the company has 2 buttons in front of them. Which one do they click? And most of the time, I'm sure all of you agree, they click on sophisticated attackers. So, yep, I'm waiting for Stuart Carson and many others to join in. Please do introduce yourself in the question section of the Bright Talk format. And you will be acknowledged. If you don't want to disclose your name, we won't acknowledge you, obviously. But please ask questions. The next alternative title is Attribute Bingo. This is really cool and close again. I'm sure all of you know. We'll read some of the titles over here. And we have MI5, Mossad, FBI, Korea. These are all the names that a good friend of mine, Stuart Carson, has taken some time to find out. BND. So you know what? You could take this and maybe play Attribute Bingo. Most attacks are from script kiddies. Yes, we're coming to that. Thank you. So MI6, NSA. So can you hear me clearly? Can everyone hear me clearly? Can you say yes or no?
Yes, I can hear you.
Feedback. Excellent. Okay, so if you can't hear me clearly, do dial in again. So Attribute Bingo is a good game when you have some time from the 24 hours a day, and let's do that. Hey, Jennifer, thank you for attending CyberWire. Okay, the offer here, folks, and you got to listen to this all the way till the end. Okay, so no cheating. You're not going to get the beer mug because the link isn't on this page. So you've got to stay all the way. And our folks from Thycotic have been very kind. And guess what? I also twisted their arm, or multiple arms, to make sure that they're going to ship this globally. So if you are dialing in from anywhere else other than the USA, you can still get a free beer mug. And if you don't drink beer like myself, then you can just chuck milk or Diet Coke or whatever you want in it. But I'm sure if those who like beer, you're going to love this mug. It's a very cool feeling and looking mug. Okay, that's it from now. So on that part, this is myself on the left, a.k.a. I'm also known as the Blue Turban. I'm really happy to be joined by a good friend of mine, James. We first met in Florida, James, correct? I think it was Orlando or Miami. Yeah, James, thanks for being here. Noshad is a good hacker. He does very naughty stuff, but on the good side, all on hacking. And another good friend of mine, Joe Carson. Joe, welcome.
Yep,
Noshad, welcome.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure to be here.
Okay, folks, I'm going to go straight in. This is going to be an open debate, and I want everyone to take part also. Apart from a couple of slides, we're going to go straight into the debate. So the question is, what is I call it a baby attack. Let's just be a bit more formal about it. What is a regular, non-sophisticated attack? And let's open up to the audience and, to the panelists. Joe, what do you think?
Well, a regular, non-sophisticated attack is pretty much basically most of the attacks out there today. It's really basically just anyone who's eliminating things like existing exploits that's available, those who are searching YouTube and looking for ways to gain access, elevate privileges, phishing scams. Pretty much most of those are social engineering are the typical attacks that we see mostly today. It's still, if you look at even the Verizon data breach investigation report that was recently released, email continues to be the #1 cyber weapon for most cyber attacks.
Excellent. James, Noshad, please jump in. James, what do you think?
Yes,
What's a regular baby attack?
Baby attacks would be the same. and most of it is just really comes down to leveraging exploits that are relatively already available on the internet.
And what I'm talking about here is, unpatched systems, weak passwords, shared passwords, badly configured systems. So how much of this do you see, when you kind of visit clients and all, James? Do you see this still every time, a common theme?
We see this a lot. However, now we're seeing that most customers are patching the systems, and it's coming down to where they're vulnerable to more protocol-driven types of attacks.
Okay, excellent. Naushad, are you there? But what do you see? You do a lot of ethical hacking, I know.
Yeah, I can hear that.
Yeah, Naushad, you've got a very bad. Naushad, buddy, I'm sorry, you've got a very bad background noise problem.
It's very bad signal. I'm sorry. It's just too much work, and here I'm just working less space now. Anyway, just wanted to have a look. Can you hear me now?
That's okay. I can. Yes.
Yeah, in regarding your questions about the patch management and patching systems most effectively, it's one of the serious issues we are having right now. Most of the companies, and even though the patch management is, they don't maintain as should be. They may have a tools and they don't implement in the right time, in the right way, supposed to be, should be.
Excellent. Thanks for that, buddy. So if you don't mind, go on, Joe. Yes.
Yeah, just going on from my side. I mean, I've been doing vulnerability assessments for and passive assessments and different types of risk assessments for the last 25 years. And the number one thing I continually find is unpatched systems are one vector that we see continuously. Weak passwords and so forth, lack of policy. But to be honest, I mean, I've been doing and going around many customers globally, and I've seen them deploy multi-million-dollar security systems. And it comes really down to is that many of the weaknesses that I find that still humans continue to be very trustworthy, and even to the point where these multi-million-dollar systems, the password sitting written down, printed on a piece of paper on the table. So we continue, no matter how much technology we deploy, and if we still remain very dependent on the human element of it, we still have these really, mismanaged and exploited systems. So human element is significant in this whole discussion.
James, were you going to say something? Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say that's true. The biggest thing would be user awareness training for
it's interesting you mentioned that, folks, because if you look at the next slide that I have here, and I'm sure all of you recognize this by now. Hey, where's this from? So this is about the WannaCry ransomware, right? And what's really interesting for those not living in England, and you may not have heard this if you also do still live in England, is in the early days of the attack a few weeks ago, someone from the NHS, I think, got on the television and openly admitted, that they were using Windows XP systems. Now, and that goes back to the human element. Now, surely, it's they may be using Windows XP, but don't go on public television and tell the whole world that you're still using unsupported Windows XP systems. So human awareness is definitely a major issue when it comes to these kind of things.
So I think, Amar, one of the important things here is that this is a multi-headed approach, and we've seen ransomware for many years. The significance here is that this is the first really representation of ransomware combined with a worm, similar to that of what Configure would have had, almost 10 years ago. So not only did it require, one person to click on it, where previous variants of ransomware, you would click on it, and then it required multiple people continuously, being exploited from these attempts. This case, it only required one person. Before then, it used the existing exploits of the SMB share that, of course, was patched in March 14th. So this was the one that, it only required one person before that piece of ransomware then exploited the rest of the network that was vulnerable to those unpatched systems. So this was significant. But I do have a piece of conspiracy theory in this particular one.
Go on.
Because if you do the research and you look into this particular ransomware, it was very intelligently created. However, the execution in the payment portion was kind of like very poor. So it looks to me that if anyone who was to do this was to walk away with 100K that we see in those wallets, I think that this, I believe, is a misdirection. I believe that this is actually to hide the real crime, which I believe is potentially someone making financial gain legally elsewhere. And this is the distraction. This is to point the finger, of course, to what we're talking about today, to a nation state. So I believe that this was actually really to drive up the value of Bitcoin. And somebody's done a currency manipulation somewhere else and did a legal crime using a ransomware as a misdirection.
Okay, thanks for that. Give me a second, folks. I've got another panelist joining, Chris Payne from Advanced Cyber Solutions. Chris, briefly introduce yourself, very briefly, and let's talk about. I'll let you introduce yourself first, Chris. Go on.
Yeah, thank you very much, Amar. Sorry, I wasn't on the introduction slide, so this is just an introduction for me now. My name is Chris Payne. I am the Managing Director of IT Security Solutions company Europe-wide called Advanced Cyber Solutions, and I've been working in the industry for going on 10 years now.
Okay, guys, I have a question for you and the audience, please. Tell me, do you think, let's have a yes or no from the audience and the panelists. Do you think WannaCry was an advanced, sophisticated attack, or a regular, if I may, the way I call it, a baby script kiddie attack? So over to the panelists first. James, yes or no? Yes for advanced, no for not advanced.
I would say no, only because the ransomware was, yes, it was heavily sophisticated, but they also were leveraging open NSA exploits. And that's something that anyone could really do, could cook up. So excellent. I don't believe it was a nation state.
Okay, what about you, Joe?
I agree. If this was a sophisticated nation state, one is it would remain hidden. We wouldn't know about it. And it post, of course, being after the Vault 7 was a disclosure, made this not a sophisticated attack because it was using a known exploit.
Okay, what about you, Chris?
I think I'm on the same trail of thought here. I don't believe that it's a nation state. I'm also inclined not to believe that it's that advanced. I think that using an existing exploit, I think that it's almost by chance. I think that the attackers themselves are surprised at how far this went. And I think that the result of that is it's become a bit of a poison chalice. Whoever launched this attack now knows that they've got a large section of the world's IT security experts looking for them. It's the most publicized attack that there ever has been. I think that Bitcoin wallet is a little bit of a poison chalice for them now.
Okay, I think the audience is coming back. No, not advanced, not advanced. I think it is maybe a test drive. Okay, hope to see you in Dublin. Yes, thank you. I'll see you in Dublin. I didn't get your name. I do apologize. What do you think, Naushad? Yes for advanced, no for not advanced. Naushad? No, I think he's okay. Maybe he's been cut off. That's fine. So I think it's very clear. Basically, this was rightly so not an advanced attack, and the fact that many people, and this is not bashing anybody at all. It's not easy. I know that there was a government kind of it was quite interesting. Microsoft also put out an article blaming the government for doing this trade in exploits. But anyway, let's move on, folks. Okay, the other one was, it's Stuart. Sorry I'm late. Hey, Stuart Carson, thank you. I'll be posting a hidden text.
Amar, I'm back, sorry. I can hear you now.
Okay, thanks, Naushad. Very briefly, do you think the WannaCry was advanced or not? Yes or no?
It's a yes and no in two sense, but it's a clever way to execute. So I'm going to disagree with the panelists. Sorry about that. It's quite different. Yeah.
Sorry. So you think it was advanced?
It's advanced in the terms of the way was developed, the structure, the coding, the mitigations, but it's not advanced as you advanced resistant targeted. It's not a targeted one. It's just random.
Okay. All right. So we'll pick that up a bit later, but let's carry on. If you could put yourself on mute, buddy. Thank you. I wanted to touch on very briefly on Talk, and I'm sure those who haven't heard about it can do that. But Talk came out blaming very advanced, sophisticated attackers, and then this is what came out a few weeks later. Is basically the theme of this webinar is to try to say to organizations, you need to stop continuously blaming advanced and sophisticated attackers, and it just doesn't help anyone. And we're going to take a list of survey questions from the audience, but consistently blaming advanced attackers to me is a very lame excuse. And hopefully the audience agrees. Yeah, and we've got many people kind of writing in now saying yes, we agree, and many saying actually the WannaCry was not an advanced attack, except for Naushad, who we have saying that he feels it was actually an advanced attack, which is always good. So we'll discuss that later. So I'm moving on to the next slide, folks. So what is an advanced attack? And I'm going to, again, open this up to Joe. Why don't you take over for now? What do you think is an advanced attack?
An advanced attack is somebody who actually really discovers zero-day vulnerabilities and really then exploits them without actually ever being detected. Of course, we can find those 0 days later, which typically get reused by other organizations or other criminal organizations that also find them. But ultimately, the advanced attack is those that use unknown exploits, basically from research 0 days, and then they're used in order to stay hidden, in order to do the damage. We can go back to the likes of Stuxnet would have been, in my terms, one of the early advanced types of attacks because of the amount of effort it went into to really make that move across air-gap systems and also have a specific target in mind. So those are the types I believe that are really advanced, rather than many of the ones that we see in the news.
Okay, Chris Payne, are you there? What do you think, Chris?
I completely agree with the last point, but I'd also like to distinguish the difference between an attack and then the actual verb to attack. I think that if we're talking about verb, then we're also talking about multi-vector, highly targeted.
Sorry, just give me 1 second, Chris. Naushad, buddy, can you please mute yourself? Naushad, please mute yourself. Sorry, Chris, yes.
No problem. Shall I start again there? I was going to say I agree with the previous panelist's point, but I wanted to distinguish between the idea of just an attack in terms of a piece of malware like Stuxnet, for example, and the actual verb to attack. And I think one of the differences when we come to the verb and we're talking about a persistent level of advanced attack, we're talking about multi-vector attacking. So highly targeted multi-vector attacking is advanced.
Okay, James, what do you think? Because I'm going to discuss the Ukraine attack, James. Did you want to kind of join in and look at what the Ukraine attack was?
Yeah. I would like as stating, last for advanced persistent threats. I mean, I do agree that they were they're sophisticated, but I mean, it also comes down with with 0 days only being used as a delivery method for the attack. So it really comes down to, for an advanced persistent attack, it comes down to the people that are attacking your organization. They're going to want to know everything as much as they can about your organization before they even look at delivering the attack.
So thanks for that, James. So I've got the Ukraine. For those of you who are listening in, and if you don't know about the Ukraine attack, you can go download the paper called Analysis of the Cyber Attack on the Ukrainian Power Grid. But what really stands out is, to me, this is an advanced attack. And if we very quickly read some of the interesting statements, the adversaries demonstrated the capability to write custom malicious firmware. And then they rendered the physical hardware inoperable and unrecoverable. I mean, to me, that is definitely an advanced nation-state attack. Go on, Joe. Were you going to say something?
Absolutely. I mean, even the mechanism of getting to it. The intelligence and the really sophistication of using, even to the point where they actually used existing poison pill to basically do the gaining access point. because they were able to analyze that most AV software out there were actually no longer detecting it, no longer looking for it, because it was no longer being actively used in the landscape. So the multiple methods and that persistence and that multi-delivery mechanism, even when it got to dark energy, to really then laterally move and ultimately deliver that firmware to the systems, was very, very sophisticated in regards to the manner and the actual method that it went through to get there.
Okay, I've got Stuart talking here saying the InfoSec community needs to stop selling snake oil solutions that are supposed to fix these APT attacks. Well, very well said, Stuart. Thanks for that. There's another one from somebody else. When WannaCry was called Eternal Blue, this was a nation-state attack vector. That's a very interesting point. Yes, WannaCry was linked back to Eternal Blue to a certain extent, and that was a nation-state. We all know from where. Okay, the other case on Ukraine was really interesting, where they then generated thousands of denial of service phone calls. I mean, that takes a lot of planning, a lot of sophistication. And James, how difficult is that in your opinion? It's not something that, a script kiddie can do, can he or she?
Yes and no. I mean, it's sophisticated, but basically they would use a voice over IP service or a voice over IP service attached to a botnet and just have it just to keep on calling.
But the amount of planning would require more than just one or two people.
Yeah, it would. It would require probably a skilled team of at least 5.
Excellent. Yeah, and then we go on.
I'm in a bit in a disagreement with that. Denial of service attacks these days, whether being VoIP or not, is not sophisticated. You mean you can go online and buy it as a service. You can pretty much get it from anywhere. So that type of area, it's when it was used, DDoS is not in nature of itself a sophisticated. It's a mechanism to basically distract and to prevent early mitigation of the real attack happening. So that by nature, you can go online and buy it as a service. I mean, even go back years ago, you could have got the ion cannon and took down any website that you wanted to. So these by nature, I don't think that DDoS by itself is sophisticated.
I agree, Joe. I guess what I'm trying to say is, in this case, the planning involved in this to make sure it all happened at the right time, would not have been most likely in the ability of one or two individuals. Am I right?
Absolutely. The planning that went into this was very thought through, and it was even actually the Ukraine incident itself was actually tested a year prior on the actual railway system, and before it even hit the energy sector, it also was already hitting the media industry as well. So it had been tested prior for the actual real event. So yes, the planning was very, very sophisticated and very time and the resources to do so was there. But the specific DDoS attack itself was not sophisticated.
And this is why I raised point about that's why I raised that point about the difference between an attack, singular, and actually the verb of attacking, because each of these individual actions themselves are not necessarily sophisticated. In fact, the commercialization of cybercrime has meant that most of these types of attacks can be bought off the dark web for very, very small values. But actually joining them together into something that's sophisticated, that's actually what makes it more of an advanced attack.
Totally. And something very close to my heart is the next slide that you guys are looking at, which is they demonstrated the capability to harvest credentials, yes. But if we look at the next paragraph, which is their first actions was to harvest credentials and then escalate privileges. Now, I'm going to open this up again to, James, let's start with you if you don't mind. If we could manage the privileges, the privileged account, would we be in a far safer place? What are your thoughts? If we look at this escalate privileges statement there.
Okay. So you're saying if we could leverage just if
we could manage privileges,
Yeah, I would say you would be in a safer. You'd be safer. I wouldn't really say you'd be 100% safe, but you would be
never.
Safer.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, okay, excellent. And Joe, what do you think? in terms of escalating privileges?
Absolutely, escalating privileges was one of the biggest areas within the actual Ukrainian incident. What actually it happened was it actually made the system look like there was problems that forced a help desk worker to log into the system with administrator rights. When that happened, that was the actual moment in time when this turned into a catastrophic moment, was when the malware itself had actually gained administrator rights. That's when the point was able to then move laterally across the network and do the damage that it did. Without those privilege elevation, this incident in Ukraine would not have occurred.
Okay, interesting. Mr. Payne, are you there? What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree with Joe. And actually, interestingly, I think it was a sort of a LinkedIn picture that his organization, Thycotic, released over Christmas that said a hacker's greatest Christmas gift is you having administrative privileges on your laptop or your terminal or whatever it happens to be. Because, you know, that basically takes all the pain away from them. Once they've got that, they can get pretty much wherever they like.
No, exactly.
Go on, sorry, James. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, it only takes one user in your organization to have admin credentials. From there, it's game over.
If you think about it from a practical perspective, I mean, I guess like most of us, we all start in support at some point in our lives, and I can remember many an occasion. Well, two different types of events, really. One where you would often get the leaders of the business insisting they must have admin privileges because they're the leaders and what can you do about it? But the other thing you tend to get is, I've got a problem with my laptop, here's my laptop, and here's my password on a piece of paper. So you're perpetuating the problem by giving them all the privilege and them having absolutely no care around protecting that privilege.
So I've got folks taking in part and saying, someone saying here, the advanced bit of APT would circumvent any privileges set in place. This is from Stuart. So what do you think, folks? I agree and disagree to this statement. I want, again, the panel, what do you think? And anybody else?
The same. I'm agreeing and disagreeing because it depends on really the circumstance that this was actually used. Elevating privilege is not that difficult to do. If basically it's in the accountability of a human is responsible for it, or if it's basically something that's locally hardened and configured in the system by itself. So those types of things are quite easily. The more challenging you make that policy, the more complicated and the more you basically add complexity, multi-factor authentication, then it becomes more difficult not only to steal a privilege, but also more difficult to actually use them, especially when you put things like behavior analytics about what the boundaries or controls that those privileges can be used in. So by itself, I don't think that elevating privileges is a difficult thing to do, but elevating privileges with those existing controls in place, that is difficult.
Okay, I'm going to open this a couple of questions. Sorry, go on. Was there anybody else?
Amar, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Naushad. What were you going to say?
Yes. Yeah, the elevator privileges all come down to a human factor. It's regarding how secure you are or how want to be secure. Most of the organizations, if you look at they don't have no idea of how many super admin, how many root privileges administrators are there. And it's all come down to nitty-gritty of how we can tie down this scenario of security status. This is, mostly argumentative procedures of how we can secure the administrative privileges rather than talking about how we can hack into the system. There's quite a different way of saying, how we can, you can give them administrative privileges, but can come down to the nitty-gritty and can be able to secure the access privileges for X, Y, Z and people. Yes, okay. Indeed. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for that, Naushad. Sorry. I'm going to go to the audience and ask for votes on several questions that we have. So the first question should be open to the audience. In your opinion, how many of the attacks on average are carried out by nation-state attackers? Don't want to stop too long for this. Okay, please make your choices. Everyone, please take part. How many, in your opinion, of the attacks on average are carried out by nation-state? This is just your opinion. We're not asking for technical evidence. Personally, I think a lot of people waste too much time in attribution I think people should focus on their basic controls, and attribution is just completely a time waster in many cases. Please jump in, panelists. Anything else? We've got a few more questions coming up. Okay. Next question. Keep poll open for at least 6 more seconds, 4 seconds, and we are going to go down. We have a 50-50 split. Okay, so we're going to stop voting, folks. Last one. Please take part. In your opinion, how many of the attacks on average are carried out by nation-state attackers? Okay, we're going to leave that on, and we're going to go to the next one. Is it good practice for companies to immediately lay the blame on nation-states such as Russia, China, or any other country? And we're going to start a new poll. Will end the current one. Yes. Okay, is it good practice for companies to immediately blame Russia, China, or any other country? Please take part. Folks, this is interactive. So, guys, is attribution good or not? Is attribution something an organization should focus on?
Definitely, it's not something that a organization or company themselves can actually do the attribution back to nation state. So attribution to nation state should ever only be communicated from the government that is actually helping with the investigation. It only should be actually communicated from a government entity and not an organization. So no organization should be actually doing attribution back to nation states.
Okay, excellent. James, what do you think?
I would agree.
Attribution.
I would agree. Attribution should only be done on the government side.
Excellent. I agree too. Chris Payne, what do you say?
Yep, completely agree. Attribution should be down to law enforcement. I think organizations should be focusing on how to respond to the threat and actually get their businesses back up and running if they've been disabled in any way.
Okay, Naushad, I'm going to come to you, but before I do that, the next question, do you think, Naushad, okay, go on, is attribution important or not? Yes or no?
Yeah, I agree with the panel on this case. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Next question, do you think blaming nation states encourages customers, regulators, insurance agents to be more sympathetic? I'm going to start voting for that. Do you think blaming nation states encourages the regulators and your customers and insurance folks to be more sympathetic towards you? So next question for you, audience. Do you think blaming nation states encourages folks to be more sympathetic towards your situation? Yes or no? And open to the audience again. Okay? Guys, what do you think about this? What is this phenomena? Everyone keeps blaming, China, Russia, somebody else.
It doesn't.
It's very funny because there's a human factor. When something goes wrong, I blame on somebody else, or you blame on somebody else. So it's a blame factor. It's passing the ball to somebody else and saying, it's because of you and you did it, and even all come down to the situations and how we analyze the issues.
Joe, what do you think?
Yeah, I actually, in my opinion here, it comes down to accountability. It's accountability and responsibility. Whether it's a nation state or not, it does not change your accountability and responsibility to actually provide the necessary services for your customers to mitigate and to reduce the risk that's exposed to them. So this doesn't change who the attacked actor is. And I think if you look back even to Microsoft recently, they actually stepped up their accountability when the Eternal Blue was actually exploited and made available, that they released the patch. But I don't think they went far enough because they only released the patch for Windows Vista and upwards. They should have actually taken their accountability and responsibility, knowing that many people out there are still using XP, and they should have released it in March when it was actually other operating systems were being patched. And that's the lack of accountability.
Thanks for that, Joe. James, I'm going to ask you another question. Yeah, go on. What do you think first, and then I'll ask you another question.
I totally agree. Organizations, they should take more responsibility. It's everyone's blaming everybody, and that's all that's doing is just fueling the fire for everybody else.
Okay. Should companies? Sorry, go on, Chris. Yes.
So just one thing to also think about is it's not just about blaming, but it's about shifting the focus of the victim. So by blaming nation state, you're saying that it's something so inevitable that I'm just a victim in this case, therefore you must feel sorry for me. When it turns out to be a 17-year-old, like in the TalkTalk hack, actually it comes back to what Joe was mentioning. You know, it's about taking responsibility for silly little changes that you need to make in your network to make them more secure, avoiding risk.
Excellent. This has really been good. Many more questions coming. What's the one control that organizations must deploy to significantly increase their resistance to attackers? There are 5 choices: privileged access management, strong password requirements, multi-factor authentication, intrusion prevention systems, or good old SIEM. Open to the audience. Please take part. And we'll come to the panel in a second. I'm going to repeat the question. What's the one control that organizations must deploy to significantly increase their resistance? I only am allowed 5 choices. Otherwise, I could have put a few more. Panelists, let's start with James this time. James, what do you think? What's the one control?
You're giving me one. I know, right? I'm almost thinking 2, but I would definitely say privilege escalation management. So, managing the permissions for your users.
Okay, excellent. Joe, what do you think? One answer.
I agree. I think, but privileged access management is one of the stronger areas here. But if I was to elaborate a little bit more detail, I would say that the part of privileged access management that really would eliminate a lot of the threats out there is the least privilege and the zero trust model. Correct. So the least privilege and zero trust model within privileged access management would be one of the strongest ways to reduce the least threat landscape from attackers.
Okay, I'm going to go to Chris and then Naushad. Chris, you first. One answer: privileged access, strong password, multi-factor, IDS, or SIEM.
Well, I would always say to customers that it's about threat modeling. So it depends on your solutions.
Chris, one answer.
However, I was going to say just to bulk it out a bit. I did see a statistic recently. I think it was from Symantec that said that 80% of public breaches could have been prevented with multi-factor authentication. So I don't know how true that is, but it's a nice thing to quote.
Okay, one different. Naushad, what do you think?
I would go with MFA because that's the most important because most of the secure attacks and myself being is regard to brute force on multi-factor authentication weakness. So that's where I stand.
I'm going to answer my question. What do I think? In this case, I'm going to stick with privileged access and escalation management only because not because Thycotic is giving a free beer mug. I'll be honest with you. But I'll be very honest, I think in my experience, the escalation of privileges and managing privileged users is far, in one answer. If I had multiple answers, I probably would have gone for MFA also. But let's see what the audience is saying. It's a 50, MFA has got 58%, privilege escalation is second, and some folks have chosen intrusion prevention systems, which is a bit worrying. Okay. I'm going to take some questions from the audience. Sorry, was there any other comment from panelists?
Yeah, Amar, but you have to get the privileges access, you have to be inside your system network, right?
Yeah, totally, that's fine.
Not necessarily. We have to remember the privileges exist everywhere. They exist in local systems that get taken out of your organization, whether it being local administrator rights, they exist in cloud applications, whether it being your Salesforce administration access. So it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to breach a perimeter in order to actually get elevated privileges. And in most cases, that local administrator account is the same local administrator account that's everywhere. So I don't believe that gaining access is necessarily being perimeter breached. Okay,
guys, if Bright Talk would let us stay for longer than 60 minutes, this would have been a really great. So, thanks for that. We can always take this offline. I have some questions from the audience and observations. One individual says, I think education should have been one of the options. I totally agree. Bright Talk only allows us 5 choices. Next one, do you think having the National Cyber Security Center in place in the UK will help with attribution when it comes to nation states? That's a good question. I'm going to leave that unanswered for now. I think it may, and as we all agreed, the panelists, attribution should be handed off to somebody else. So most organizations can focus on, getting other stuff right. Another point, the media put pressure on these companies to say who did it. So it is easy to say it is such a, that's a really good point, that actually the media puts a lot of pressure on people, on companies to come out clean and lay the blame. So they have to say something. Very good point. Thank you. Another question. Privileged access management, something reduces the productivity. Ooh. Okay, this is interesting. Privileged access management reduces productivity in case of developers. Go on. Who is going to take? Anyone going to agree or disagree?
I'll take it. This comes down to your actually trust model. If you have a way to basically determine that what basically, so privileged access management, you can actually do it elevation on demand without actually impacting the trust model or actually impacting productivity. It really comes down to what you determine as your trusted sources. And this is what I refer to as the zero model of trust, that you actually build up trust to a certain level of trust model. And this will allow you to actually build up that trust where actually productivity is almost no impact whatsoever. It only impacts whenever something new is in your network or in your systems. In that case, you need to rebuild the trust for that specific action. So you can do without having productivity impact.
Okay, I agree, and I don't think it should be a product. I don't think any security should be a productivity disabler. Okay, and some things are required, and I think user education is very important. Before I forget, I must stress, everybody listening in, only if you stay till the end, we are going to announce the link that you have to fill in to get a free beer mug delivered to you anywhere on planet Earth. If you live outside of planet Earth, good luck, but on planet Earth, you should be having a free beer mug delivered to you very shortly if you stay till the end and fill in some questions. Which attacker type worries you most? Go, folks. Which attacker type worries you most? One answer only. Advanced state, advanced criminal, script kiddie, hacktivist, or insider? James.
So can you repeat that? Sorry.
Which attacker type worries you the most? Advanced state, script kiddie, criminal, hacktivist, or insider?
That's interesting. I would go with the insider.
Okay, next one. Chris Payne, what do you think?
Absolutely agree with the insider.
Okay, Joe.
I would, yes, insider is the biggest threat. I would actually go a little bit step further. I would actually say the suicidal insider, the person who doesn't care about getting away.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Okay, or the disgruntled insider, folks. It's not necessarily suicidal. He or she may not just be happy, or may have had a bad hair day, or turban day, like me. Anyway, Naushad, which one? One answer. What
insider
worries you most? Insider. Okay.
Insider.
Okay, I'm going to go to the next question. There's quite a few ones here. Why do you think companies like to blame? No, which one? What attacker? Do you allow? Okay, how about this? Do you monitor for privilege escalation activity on your endpoints? This is a question for the folks dialing in and listening in. Do you monitor for privilege escalation activity on your endpoints? A very quick question. Do you monitor for privilege escalation activity? In the meantime, I'm going to take some other questions from the audience. Which nation state do you think is the real threat? Ooh. Oh, wow. That's a good question and very controversial.
Yeah.
Panelists, go on, sir. You don't have to answer them, but go on. Which nation state do you think is a real threat?
Well, I think maybe this is a controversial answer. But,
all right, let's park the answer. Go on.
Sorry.
I was just going to say I would likely say that any country that is not friendly to your own.
Okay. Anybody else before we move on? It's a very dangerous question, Stuart. Thanks for asking that.
So I would say that I'm not going to name countries and get into the really debate. I think the nation states which are the most dangerous nation states are those which allow their own citizens to do cyber crimes against other countries.
Okay, James, anything?
I would have to agree with that. I won't say specific states, but yeah, I would have to agree. I mean, we can say things. There's certain countries that would allow their citizens to commit crimes. So. Some
Excellent.
of those will take Russia, for example.
Fair enough. And like I said, so the whole title of the thing is we need to stop blaming nation states, but they do attack, and I'm not saying they don't. Another question for the audience. Why do you think companies like to blame nation state hackers when in most cases we know that basic controls are not in place? Why do you think companies like to blame Russia, China? Why do they do that? I've got 5 options. Because it's an easy cop-out, look for sympathy, avoid insurance, pure lazy, to cover their own tracks. Because it's an easy cop-out. Okay, excellent. Chris Payne, what do you think? One answer. Why do you think companies like to blame?
I think it's laziness. It's an easy cop-out.
Okay. Joe?
I think it's basically to reduce their accountability and responsibility. I think what they're trying to do is trying to change the direction of the conversation and point it to a country. So it's a bit of it's media handling, but it's very poor. Okay,
Noshad, one answer. What do you think? Lazy, avoid insurance, easy, cop out. Which one?
Is a cop out.
Okay, James, what do you think, sir?
No, it's definitely a cop out.
Okay, excellent. So we're going to go to the next question. Audience participation is very good here. Should companies who lay blame before carrying out thorough investigations be penalized? Ooh. Yeah, James, what do you think? Yes or no?
Can you repeat that?
Should companies who lay blame before doing any attribution be penalized? Yes or no?
Yeah, that's. I would say no.
Okay, next one, Joe.
I would say yes. The reason why is that anytime you you think in real world, if you blame someone and they're impacted financially or by some type of damage from a brand or any type of thing, it should be permitted that impacted party should actually be able to penalize that organization for the false accusation. So yes, I would say that penalization should be allowed, but it should be responsible and should be actually within the damage that's impacted on the party.
Okay, Noshad, yes or no? One answer. Should companies be penalized?
Your companies need to be taken accountable. So that should be the penalized standard. Because if you don't take a responsibility and accountability, and then how are we going to defend? That's
excellent. Excellent. And what does Chris Payne? What do you think?
I agree with Joe on this point. I think that companies should definitely be penalized in those cases. We have to be careful with leveraging blame. It can be damaging to some parties. And of course, we don't allow that to happen in other world examples, like legal, for example.
Okay, that's interesting. Two more questions to go. Do you allow any users in your organization to use an account with administrative privileges when they are not carrying out tasks which require such access? This is a question for the audience. Please take part. Do you allow any users to use privileges, basically heightened privileges when they are doing regular tasks? Yes, no, or don't know? I mean, surely that must be the least privileged approach, right, folks? Panelists?
Yeah, I think and I think Joe's probably the expert here, but in at least most of the companies that I've worked in or worked with, the idea is to have least privilege. So you operate using account which you only have the privilege to do your day-to-day job, and then potentially you have another account or you have a process that you need to go through to escalate that, but then there's usually a justification around that too. So I would hope most people are running on a least privilege situation.
I would agree with you on that, but I've seen both. I've seen scenarios at a lot of big companies where not just board members, but a lot of people just have admin access.
So, guys, I have one question, and this is from the audience again, and this is GDPR, especially for the folks in the UK or Europe. GDPR is really going to be obviously hitting companies, well, globally, but in Europe and UK definitely. Under GDPR, do you think that companies who incorrectly attribute should be penalized? I don't think there's a specific provision for that. Quick one, audience, Joe and Chris.
Yes, I do. I believe that under DPR, there's the accountability respective side of things and the breach notification, and attribution should be one of those areas.
Okay, Chris, what do you think?
As you rightly say, it's not currently in the GDPR. I think the GDPR would have to change from being around private information to actually encompass this. But I agree with Joe. I think that there should be some kind of legislation, at least even if it's separate, to protect people from just willy-nilly blame.
Okay, thanks. The audience says 64% of them do not allow administrative privileges when people are doing regular activities. One last question for the audience and for the panelists. What can insurance companies do to better ensure their clients don't cry wolf or not me? What can they do? Demand for factual evidence from the victim, ensure that organizations have basic controls in place, penalize companies if basic controls are missing, insist that organizations have well-scoped ISO 27001 or equivalent certificates. Panelists, what do you think to this question? I'm going to repeat it. What can insurance companies do to better ensure that clients don't cry, don't cry wolf or don't cry not me? It was super duper nation state attackers. Demand for factual evidence, ensure organizations have basic controls, penalize companies if basic controls are missing, insist that organizations have 27001 or similar. I'm going to go to up to you. One of you, panelists, start, please.
Well, actually, I think that option 2, 3, and 4 are applicable in this case, and maybe in a specific order. Well, let me justify that. I think if you're taking out insurance, then the insurance company is going to expect you to have basic controls in place in order for that insurance, to be valid. You would be penalised if they were missing in the case of you making a claim. And of course, one of the ways to prove that you've got controls in place is to have an accreditation. So I'll probably choose option 2 if I have to stick to one, but I actually think 3 options are valid here.
Okay. James, what do you think?
I would agree. I mean, if basic controls aren't in place, I agree they should be penalized, but I also would say 2 options. I also believe that evidence should be provided to the insurance companies through as much as evidence as they could give.
Yeah. Okay, Joe, what do you think?
If you have to choose one of these, you can't. The other 3, the controls and penalizing and the ISO, you can't have those without actually having evidence of them existing. So factual evidence and digital forensics is vital here to supporting the other items or the other actually answers. So factual evidence, digital forensics, and the ability to validate and verify that you had the controls, they existed, they were in place. So number 1 for me is essential here to supporting the rest of the actual controls.
Okay, guys, we are 52 minutes into this, and I've really enjoyed this. So I'm going to have to show the link to everybody who has stayed so far, and then discuss something else. Okay, folks, this is the link to get your free beer mug from Thycotic, who has been very kindly agreed to ship this globally on planet Earth. Any 2 hours from now, if you fill in the link over here, which is bit.ly, CMA Thycotic, Thycotic will, if you fill in that link for the free trial, you get a free beer shipped to you on, anywhere. So initially they were only saying USA, and then I twisted a couple of arms, and they said, yes, we will ship globally. So do take this. Listen, I don't drink beer. I'm going to use that for some kind of drink. Normally have Diet Coke or milk, right? But I'm sure everybody else on the panelists also, you can try that. I'll try to get Thycotic to give all the panelists a beer mug also, but let's see what they say. But otherwise, do take part. And any other questions from the audience? Now is the time to bring them in. Okay, and panelists, do you have any questions up till now? Panelists, Joe, Chris, James.
From my side, I mean, we have to get to the point is that any cyber attack or any incident can be attributed back to nation state. It's clear. You can. I mean, I can take any incident out there and I can basically find some type of association back to a nation state. it doesn't change the accountability and responsibility we have in the customers. So we still have the ability to quickly recover, to basically ensure that the customers are protected and the right controls are in place to prevent it from happening. Attribution should be something that should be done with a legal perspective and should be done professionally in the right manner. So we shouldn't be too quick to point the trigger and point fingers to nation states.
Okay, thanks for that, Joe. James, what do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree on that. Attribution should be something that organizations should not be doing at all, and it should only be doing from a government perspective. And I mean, because I can look at, take Hacking Team, for example. Hacking Team was an organization that was developing sophisticated malware that they were selling to nation states. I mean, some other malware, you could look at anything and be able to determine if it's a nation state or not. Some of it.
Yeah, I love the Thycotic one. If you think about it, Thycotic potentially was a nation state attack. The 17-year-old boy from Northern Ireland, my home country, his computer was bought by his mother. His mother was on social care and received the social care money from the UK government, which he used to buy the laptop. So
was that a nation state attack?
Yeah, they bought the laptop to carry out the actual attack. So attribution is easy.
Okay, Chris Payne, any final comments?
I thought that was an interesting comment from Joe there, that we can kind of attribute anything back to a nation state. But I agree with what the panel's saying. I don't think attribution is really a task for the victim organization. They should be concentrating on how can they prevent such a thing happening again, what's been lost, what they can do to compensate those who have been lost or even protect them, and of course some kind of remediation and getting back up on their feet.
Okay, thanks for that. Naushad, before I let you the last word, final reminder, free beer mug, if you type in that link, bit.ly /CMA Thycotic, and fill in the trial for the secret server, you get a free beer mug delivered to you globally. Naushad, what are your final comments on this? And then we have to cut it off.
Yeah, what is the we need to look at a broader picture of here. What is the targeted attack? What is the sophisticated attack? And what's the how this should be done and executed? So it's quite complicated. And if you think of the basic systems and how we're supposed to go through the daily base authentication system privileges, and these are the usual stuff to go through on the systems.
Okay, I've got one final question. I've downloaded Secret Server. What needs to be done after that? Someone will get in touch with you. So give me your name, or you can email me. I'm Amar, AMAR, at cm-alliance.com. Just fill out the form, download Secret Server, or actually install it. I think fill it out, try it anyway. The free beer mug should be with you. Okay, I wanted to thank everybody. James Smith from Canada, a good friend again. Joe, again a good friend. Joe Carson from Thycotic. Naushad, again a very good friend. And Chris Payne from Advanced Cyber Solutions. And Stuart Colson, who couldn't make it on the phone, but he's been flooding in with all the questions and many other points. Stuart, thank you so much. Everybody else, panelists, thank you. And thanks to Thycotic for the beer mug. Folks, do give us some feedback before you go, and all feedback is appreciated. We would have to love for have more than 1 hour, but Bright Talk is going to cut this after another 2 more minutes. Thank you, everybody, and keep in touch. Thank you all.